All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited to be discussing with you how you can gain stakeholder trust and buy-in. Our presentation is just about 30 minutes long today, and then we'll have some time for questions. So feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A section of the chat and we'll address them at the end. This is the final session of our three-part series to help education marketers plan, track, and earn buy-in for your marketing strategy. In our first session, we covered creating a student-centric journey rooted in the marketing funnel. The second session covered an especially hot topic in education, and we demonstrated how you can pull together disparate data from multiple sources into a dashboard that drives decision-making. Today, we're kicking off the year with a session about internal working relationships and how to demonstrate and sell your ideas to your stakeholders. You'll receive an email with all of the recordings for the 3 sessions later this week, so be on the lookout for that. I'm John Lohman. I'm the digital advertising manager here at Search Influence, and I oversee our digital ads team, and together we are responsible for designing, executing, and optimizing our clients' campaign strategies. Search Influence has a 16-year history of results-focused digital marketing. We were founded in 2006 with a focus on search engine optimization, and we've grown to support our clients at all stages of the prospect's journey while maintaining our focus on delivering best-in-class SEO strategies. We have a particular niche in education, having spent the last 5 years applying our marketing solutions to higher ed clients. Today, we'll cover the 4-part formula that we use to demonstrate the value of a new marketing strategy, which metrics to consider that best match organizational goals as well as stakeholder priorities, and then we'll close down with some Q&A. There's a 4-part formula that we use to demonstrate the value of a new marketing strategy. We think it's important to bring in qualitative thinking while primarily hinging on quantitative. So the extent to which you bring in details and qualitative reasoning should really vary depending on the stakeholder you're speaking with. The first step in the formula is to share your goals. Then relate those goals to your target demographic, and in some cases, you may need to demonstrate to your stakeholder that the target demo is important to the organization's overall goals. Next, you want to compare and contrast to your current strategy, and finally, tailor each of these elements to your audience. Now let's get into these 4 steps, taking an in-depth look at some methods and tools for each. So we start every discussion regarding new marketing strategies with the goal so that stakeholders can see the outcome first and visualize that end result. It also demonstrates that there is an expected return on the strategy that you developed and that you thought through the organizational impact. When defining goals, we recommend starting with outlining qualitative goals, simply just because this is easier to do. It's a great way to brainstorm as well. So some qualitative goals that you may be thinking about are exploring new ways to reach rising freshmen, promoting financial services offered to undergraduates, or maybe you just opened a new campus and you need to expand your geographic reach. To turn that into a more measurable goal, take it a step further and add some specifics. So when looking at some of our qualitative goals from the previous slide, you can turn that into a good quantitative goal by putting together something like this. Drive 500 undergraduate applications for new students between the ages of 18 and 24 within the greater New Orleans area by the end of 2021. It is specific, measurable, and time-bound. A way you can quickly build trust with your stakeholders at this point in the discussion is just by being transparent with your communication. Let them know how frequently they can expect updates on your progress. So in this case, we plan on updating monthly. And this also puts a check in place to continue building trust along the way and letting your stakeholders know that you are holding yourself accountable. The next step in the 4-part formula is to find and use data to showcase how this new strategy will help you bring in your target demographic. I'm sure that you've heard questions like, are our alums on Instagram? Are millennials still on Facebook? And these are valid questions that are likely to come up. So if you can be prepared to give the data to support your reasoning, you will be pre-answering those potential objections. The really great thing with all of this is that the use of social media is constantly studied, and therefore trustworthy data is readily available. By leveraging the demographic changes on these networks, you can take advantage of current usage while also spotting trends that might impact your future strategies so you can continue to stay ahead of the curve. A couple of key data points we find helpful to research and find answers for are what percentage of the demographic utilizes the platform, and then how much time do they spend on the platform. There's a lot of different resources available out there, but some that we often leverage are the Pew Research Center, which is updated yearly with social media and digital usage stats. Sprout Social, which has a great roundup of stats from various sources. And then finally, Data Reportal, which is a bit more broad about online and digital usage. And this is a collaborative effort of multiple groups. They do have global and US data, so when possible, make sure you're looking at the US data if that is your target demographic. If we think back to the goal of driving 500 undergraduate applications and then tie it to our qualitative goal of exploring new ways to reach rising freshmen, we can start to get some ideas by analyzing their online behavior. Where are they spending their time? Well, according to Forbes, 60% of TikTok users are Generation Z, which are people born between 1995 and 2010, and that includes our target demo of 18 to 24-year-olds. According to Hootsuite, the average user spends about 13 months on TikTok, and we also found that 20% of Gen Z spends more than 5 hours every day on TikTok. So armed with these stats, you can make the case for including TikTok as part of your marketing strategy. And when you're introducing not just a new strategy, but a relatively new platform or tactic like TikTok, it's important to have the data as backup. Once you've demonstrated that you are advertising in the right places and engaging in the right places, you'll want to make sure that you are saying the right things. So using data to understand the audience's behavioral trends and the conversion triggers can help in developing a marketing strategy with a messaging strategy that will effectively connect with your audience. So let's take a look at how that might play out in our example. So in targeting 18 to 24-year-olds, we found that 67% of Gen Z students indicate that their top concern is being able to afford college. And 73% of them said that they would rather give up their phone app than the message app on their cell phone. So that's some pretty powerful statistics that tell us that students are worried they won't be able to afford college and that the preferred digital communication is text over email or voice. So you can use this research in your advertising by focusing on gathering phone numbers as your CTA and then following up by texting applicants your tuition calculators or even financial aid offerings that your university has. One objection that you may get from stakeholders as you're presenting this information is, why do we even care about the age group that we're trying to target? I think most people would assume that the average age a senior graduates high school is 18, but interestingly, 20 is the average age for incoming freshmen. So if students are taking that gap year between secondary and higher education, it's likely college information isn't as readily available for this age group as it was when they were in high school. What this means is that universities must reach potential students where they're already engaging and communicate with them in ways that they're likely to respond. So having this research at your fingertips will help you build a case on the importance in selling to this particular demographic. The next step in the formula is to compare and contrast this new strategy to the current strategies that you're already running. And when you are comparing and contrasting, your main focus should be on demonstrating how the new strategy bolsters your current strategy. So does this tactic serve as another touch point for an existing audience? In what ways does the current marketing strategy not support meeting the goal that you set? Is there a big gap that this new strategy can fill? And who do our current campaigns reach versus who are we trying to reach? And let's take a look at how we can demonstrate that a little bit more. So some ways you can use data to show that would be to look at your campaign results and Google Analytics website visitors. So for example, by looking at your current campaign data, you can demonstrate something like currently our outdoor, Facebook, and Google campaigns are reaching primarily 20 to 30-year-olds. Maybe that's the targeting that you set in the campaign, or the data is showing you that. That is currently capturing some of your target demographic for your new strategy of 18 to 24-year-olds. But when you take a deeper look in Google Analytics, as you see here, you could show that the most popular age range coming to your site is actually 25 to 34-year-olds, meaning you still have opportunity to have a bigger focus on the target demo of 18 to 24-year-olds and drive more of them to your site. In our experience, sharing your goals and relating them to the target demographic and comparing and contrasting to your current strategy are really critical cornerstones to proposing and discussing any marketing strategy, particularly new ones. So the final step in the formula is tailoring all of this information to your audience. We recommend making some adjustments to how you present and what supplemental info you will bring into the conversation depending on your audience. We're going to give you an overview of how we've successfully done this in the past. So at Search Influence, we leverage the DISC method of understanding and processing personalities to improve workplace relationships, whether that's internally or with our clients. And in DISC, there are 4 quadrants that people fall into. There's lots of different personality tests, so you've probably been exposed to something similar to this throughout your career. For DISC in particular, each of us falls typically into 2 of these quadrants, with one being more dominant. DISC can be a helpful tool to understand what is most likely important to someone and how they desire to communicate and be communicated with. So it's best to combine your direct experience with that individual plus this method just to make sure that you're not making an incorrect assumption about your audience. When working on a team, it can be really impactful on interpersonal relationships to understand each other's DISC profiles. We've actually all taken this profile at Search Influence so that we can understand how best to work with our teammates. And there are both paid and free versions. I've put on the slide a link to the free version, and you can access that at tonyrobbins.com/disc. So let's dive into a brief overview of each of the 4 quadrants and the likely roles that fall into each, and how you can adapt your marketing strategy discussions based on these learnings. So people who fall into the dominance quadrant are most likely to have a confident personality and place an emphasis on bottom line results. Presidents, deans, and recruiter positions are more likely to fall into this quadrant or possess these types of traits. And these individuals will want to hear about ROI, profit, and student acquisition, and you should keep your discussion brief and to the point. Be sure to come with clear recommendations and make direct asks. Those in the influence quadrant tend to value relationships and influencing others. These are most likely to be your team members and leaders in PR and marketing or people managers. When you present to these individuals, you want to focus on how the strategy will reach your target market. Make sure you're providing messaging recommendations and bring in marketing metrics that you know that they value. This is an audience where you can bring in your qualitative insights and examples, including things like competitive research. Those who fall in the steadiness quadrant are dependable people who emphasize cooperation and sincerity. These are likely to be some guidance counselors, enrollment advisors, or admin assistants. And the individuals in the S quadrant will want to hear about the messaging and how this effort will improve student education and the student experience. They're also more likely to need some time to respond to your recommendations, so allow them time to take in the info and give feedback. Make sure you're either pausing throughout your presentation, just letting them digest it, or you may even want to send the info ahead of time or follow up with the info in writing and give them a deadline to respond. Finally, those who fall in the conscientiousness quadrant value quality, accuracy, and expertise. These are most likely to be your CFOs, accountants, and analysts. And you want to focus on the same ROI and outcome metrics that you leverage with your D stakeholders, and also bring in supporting metrics as well as backup stats from trusted sources. Of course, I want to emphasize these are not hard and fast rules, so you should combine all of your real-world experience with those individuals when possible to determine what level of detail to share with them. So today we're going to give you a little something extra, or as we say in New Orleans, some lagniappe. We've cited a few examples of metrics and goals that you can tie into your pitch, depending on the initiative and your stakeholder. And there are a lot of metrics that you could consider that would best match organizational goals as well as stakeholder priorities. So let's review some of the options just to get your juices flowing, and we'll look at marketing metrics and some organizational metrics. In terms of marketing metrics, you could look at both micro and macro metrics. Micro metrics are more likely to speak to those familiar with this information, like those in marketing. And you can kind of consider these leading indicators or even secondary metrics to monitor campaign performance. Macro metrics are more impactful metrics that truly demonstrate the performance of your marketing. So those are things like cost per inquiry, cost per enrollment, ROI, the important metrics that really tie into the organizational metrics. Taking it a step further, organizational metrics speak to the business impact. For these metrics, we've found that you really are going to have to work across teams to receive all of the data, and these metrics impact some of the most important outcomes to stakeholders, such as net profitability, cohort goal attainment, student retention, average course enrollment, graduation rates, and post-graduation job rate. It can be helpful to think about the metrics as they relate to the marketing funnel. So this can help you select the right metrics to focus on depending on where you need to be focused. So if you are going into a new market or launching a new degree, your strategy is going to be much more focused on awareness. And so your goals might be around impressions and website visits. Pay attention to personality here, because C's may care more about these micro metrics and higher funnel metrics, whereas your D's are more likely to care about lower funnel metrics, which can be a little bit tricky if your strategy is really focused on awareness. And if that's the case and your stakeholder only cares about conversions, it's critical that you communicate the need to build awareness first and show how you can and will measure that. You give a false impression that a brand strategy will drive conversions, that's not going to build trust along the way. Finally, when you leverage digital marketing, you can track these metrics much more easily and accurately. We have a lot of experience with tracking, and we know that no tracking is perfect, but tracking digital marketing at least gives you an idea of the impact of your marketing efforts. Digital marketing turns intangible information into tangible and trackable conversion points. So think about the things on your site that you can set up. Those things would be like inquiry forms, online tour schedulers, any quizzes that you have, or even tuition calculators. Tracking the engagement on those types of things can be really valuable. We understand that you may be limited at some data based on software systems available. So at a minimum, try to leverage these 5 platforms to help you analyze, optimize, and demonstrate success of your marketing campaigns. Those 5 platforms are Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, Facebook Pixel and Ads Manager, your enrollment management system, and your call tracking system. So now that you've got the buy-in, what do you do next? Make sure that you are reliable and deliver updates on the goal on the promised schedule, especially for your S stakeholders. For those D stakeholders, you'll want to give brief and direct updates that report on the top or bottom line goal. For your C stakeholders, you'll want to give additional performance details. And for I stakeholders, you can get more specific, as these are likely your teammates within your department, and they'll want to hear what optimizations you're doing, as well as qualitative insights on the campaign. You may need to get set up to get data you need from other departments, especially if you picked organizational metrics for your goal. So as I said, it can be difficult to gather that information, and you'll want to put a system in place to make sure that you can get that data regularly. And with that, you will be set up to follow through on the expectations you set, which is the cornerstone to creating trust in the next new marketing strategy that you will want to propose. So with that, let's move into some Q&A. All right, so it looks like we have just a couple of questions. So I'll read them out. Let's see, the first question is, what do you do when you have multiple stakeholders in the room with different personalities, and how do you tailor to all of them? That's a really good question. So you'll probably want to structure your presentation to give a little bit of a summary at the beginning so that those people who want the high points can hear them immediately, but then indicate that you will be sharing some details in a follow-up, or you could even add like an appendix to your presentation or have a printout so those who like having all the extra details can have it readily available. Let's see. Another question is, what are some ways to confirm that your goal is realistic? That's another good question, and something that does take some practice. Setting realistic goals that align with, overall organizational goals can be tricky because sometimes they might not be realistic. So looking for any industry data that's out there to see, what is really expected from a cost per acquisition standpoint or even a click-through rate standpoint can be helpful in tweaking your goal. And then making sure that you look at any historical data from campaigns that you've run in the past, or even just overall historical data on how your university has moved prospects through the funnel. So taking that into effect, and then thinking about how your current strategy is different than, the current one that you're running is going to be different than the one you're proposing. Things like your location being larger or smaller could come into play, which programs you're promoting, if it's a more niche program or a larger audience, and if the competition for those programs is different, that's something you'll want to factor in. And then just making sure that you're keeping an eye on how it's performing so that you can tweak the goal if needed once you get some of your own real data in there. Don't think we have any other questions today. So thanks again for tuning in to the last session of our training series. Again, all the recordings will be available on demand and will be sent to you in the next couple of days via email. And if you don't mind, take a moment to help us improve by answering the 3-question survey at the end of the live webinar. We would really appreciate any feedback that you have. Thanks again for joining us, and hope you have a great day.